Hi, everyone. So, for this week's discussion, I decided to share with you all the failed CIA invasion in Cuba, also known as the Bay of Pigs, one of America's biggest failures during President Eisenhower's presidencies in the 1960s. The Cubans welcomed Fidel Castro's overthrow of dictator Fulgencio Batista, which made America a little edgy for many reasons. Batista had extraordinary American business ties and with the American mob, but most importantly, he was anti communist. On the other hand, Castro disapproved the approach that Americas took their businesses and interests in Cuba. Everyone's first impression of Fidel was maybe he's a good guy, maybe he's not a dirty communist. However, he turned out to be a dirty communist. Castro decided to use his power to reduce American influence on the island. In 1960, when President Eisenhower began to cut ties with Cuba, Castro, on the other hand, was busy building ties with the Soviet Union. To prevent the Cuban economy from falling, the Soviet Union agreed to pay 80% of Cuba's export, which was mainly sugar. In March 1960, Eisenhower decided he had to do something to get rid of Fidel. So he directed the CIA to develop a plan to invade Cuba and overthrow the Castro regime. The CIA organized a operation of Cuban exiles and put together a revolutionary force also known as the Brigade 2506. When President John F. Kennedy took over in 1961, he learned that Fidel was a Soviet client posing a threat to all Latin America, and after consulting with his advisors in the Department of State and the CIA, he decided to continue with the plan that President Eisenhower had originally started. CIA officers told him that they would be able to keep the invasion a secret, and the campaign would spark an anti-Castro uprising in the island if it went according to plan. With that in mind, on April 17, 1961, the brigades took off in force of American B-26 bombers painted to look like stolen Cuban planes and conduct a strike against Cuban airfields. However, the Americans were too late. Castro and the island had already every detail possible of the operation happening. Radio station had already broadcasted of the operation across Cuba. Fidel was aware of the attack and had already moved planes to a different part of the island. Paratroopers landed in wrong places, and Castro had already pinned the invaders on the beach. Exiles surrendered after less than a day of fighting. It was a huge win for Castro, however, it was a bigger loss for the United States foreign policy. Determined to make up for this failed invasion, the administration initiated an Operation Mongoose to plan a sabotage and to destabilize the Cuban government and economy, and possible assassination of Fidel Castro, but never went as far to provoke an actual war. This actually led later on to the Cuban Missiles Crisis in 1962. Thank you all for listening.